All right, this is video 3 of 3, so you are almost completed. However, if you have not watched video 1 or video 2, you need to go back and start at the beginning because this will make very little sense. Where we left off in the story, Patricia and Frankie, as Seamus calls him, were chit-chatting and talking and reading poetry back and forth, which was strictly forbidden. And as a result, Frankie got kicked upstairs. That's the moment we're in right now. Seamus has been instructed to move Frank upstairs into a big empty ward. So it's a big room up there. The nurse instructs Seamus to actually put him at the far end of the room, so there's zero chance he can chat with Patricia or anybody. And and that's his punishment for talking. And the nun was less than impressed with the content of the poem. They're reading The Highwayman. And you can understand how, that would be frowned upon, the sort of glorifying the thief in the story and sort of romanticizing the bad behavior that the highwayman engages in. So that's the moment we're at. Frankie is being sent up there. So let's see what happens. We'll pick up here where the nurse is still kind of yelling at Frankie and sending him up there. So the nurse says, she tells Seamus this was the fever ward during the Great Famine long ago, and only God knows how many died here, brought in too late for anything but a wash before they were buried. And there are stories of cries and moans in the far reaches of the night. She says 'twould break your heart to think of what the English did to us, that if they didn't put the blight on the potato, they didn't do much to take it off. No pity, no feeling at all for the people that died in this very ward, children suffering and dying here, while the English feasted on roast beef and guzzled the best of wine in their big houses, little children with their mouths all green from trying to eat the grass in the fields beyond. God bless us and save us and guard us from future famines. So the nun was explaining to Seamus that the room used to be used to prepare people, unfortunately, to die during the potato famine. And that's what the room had been used for. You can, again, see that little bit of hints against the English. We had said that Seamus doesn't like the English, and a lot of people in Ireland didn't like the English. And while they weren't really to blame for the potato famine, and she says she can't prove that they had anything to do with it, they didn't do anything to stop it either. So you can just see that negative attitude towards the English here. And also kind of the sort of scariness of that room, you can imagine. And Francis is going to kind of feel that solitude of that room. Seamus says, 'twere a terrible thing indeed, and he wouldn't want to be walking these halls in the dark with all the little green mouths gaping at him. The nurse takes my temperature. 'Tis up a bit. Have a good sleep for yourself now that you're away from the chatter with Patricia Madigan below, who will never know a gray hair. She shakes her head at Seamus, and he gives her a sad shake back. Nurses and nuns never think you know what they're talking about. If you're 10 going on 11, you're supposed to be simple, like my Uncle Pat Sheehan, who was dropped on his head. You can't ask questions. You can't show you understand what the nurse said about Patricia Madigan, that she's going to die. You can't show you want to cry over this girl who taught you a lovely poem, which the nun says is bad. So the nun said that Patricia Madigan will never know a gray hair. That's the expression that she used. And they think they've talked over Francis's head, but they haven't. Francis knows exactly what they meant, or what she meant when she said that. The nurse tells Seamus she has to go, and he's to sweep the lint from under my bed and mop up a bit around the ward. Seamus tells me she's a right old witch for running to Sister Rita and complaining about the poem going between the two rooms, that you can't catch a disease from a poem unless it's love, haha. And that's not bloody likely when you're, 10 going on 11? You never heard the likes of it. A little fella shifted upstairs for saying a poem, and he has a good mind to go to the Limerick Leader, which is a newspaper, and tell them print the whole thing, except he has this job and he'd lose it if ever Sister Rita found out. Anyway, Frankie, you'll be out of here one of these fine days, and you can read all the poetry you want, but I don't know about Patricia below. I don't know about Patricia. God help us. He knows about Patricia in 2 days because she got out of bed to go to the lavatory when she was supposed to use a bedpan and collapsed and died in the lavatory. Seamus is mopping the floor, and there are tears on his cheeks, and he's saying, just a dirty, rotten thing to die in a lavatory when you're lovely in yourself. She told me she was sorry she had you reciting that poem and getting you shifted from the room, Frankie. She said 'twas all her fault. It wasn't, Seamus. I know, and didn't I tell her that? Patricia is gone, and I'll never know what happened to the highwayman and Bess, the landlord's daughter. I asked Seamus, but he doesn't know any poetry at all, especially English poetry. He knew an Irish poem once, but it was about fairies and had no sign of a highwayman in it. Still, he'll ask the men in his local pub, where there's always someone reciting something, and he'll bring it back to me. Won't I be busy, meanwhile, reading my short history of England and finding out all about their perfidy? That's what Seamus says, perfidy. And I don't know what it means, and he doesn't know what it means. But if it's something the English do, it must be terrible. We can see they provided the definition. It's treachery and betrayal. But again, that hint of if the English do it, he knew the English did it. So he knew it was a bad thing just because the English did it. He comes 3 times a week to mop the floor, and the nurse is there every morning to take my temperature and pulse. The doctors listen to my chest and the thing hanging from his neck. They all say, and how's our little soldier today? A girl with a blue dress brings meals 3 times a day and never talks to me. Seamus says she's not right in the head, so don't say a word to her. The July days are long, and I fear the dark. There are only 2 ceiling lights in the ward, and they're switched off when the tea tray is taken away and the nurse gives me pills. The nurse tells me to go to sleep, but I can't because I see people in the 19 beds in the ward, all dying and green around their mouths where they tried to eat grass and moaning for soup, Protestant soup, any soup. And I cover my face with a pillow, hoping they won't come and stand around the bed, clawing at me and howling for bits of the chocolate bar my mother brought last week. So he's imagining that he can see the people who had died in this room during the potato famine, and they're sort of haunted by their ghosts. No, she didn't bring it. She had it to send it in because I can't have any more visitors. Sister Rita tells me a visit to the fever hospital is a privilege, and after my bad behavior with Patricia Madigan in that poem, I can't have the privilege anymore. She says I'll be going home in a few weeks, and my job is to concentrate on getting better and learn to walk again after being in bed for 6 weeks. And I can get out of bed tomorrow after breakfast. I don't know why she says I have to learn to walk when I've been walking since I was a baby. But when the nurse stands me up by my side of the bed, I fall to the floor and the nurse laughs. See, you're a baby again. I practice walking from bed to bed, back and forth, back and forth. I don't want to be a baby. I don't want to be in this empty ward with no Patricia and no highwayman and no red-lipped landlord's daughter. I don't want the ghosts of children with green mouths pointing bony fingers at me and clamoring for bits of my chocolate bar. Seamus says a man in his pub knew all the verses of the highwayman poem, and it has a very sad end. But I like him to say it because he never learned how to read, and he had to carry the poem in his head. He stands in the middle of the ward, leaning on his mop, and recites, "Tlot, tlot," in the frosty silence, "tlot, tlot," in the echoing night. Nearer he came and nearer. Her face was like a light. Her eyes grew wide for a moment. She drew one last deep breath. Then her fingers moved in the moonlight. Her musket shattered the moonlight, shattered her breast in the moonlight, and warned him with her death. He hears the shot and escapes, but when he learns at dawn how Bess died, he goes into a rage and returns for revenge, only to be shot down by the redcoats, which again you know from reading the poem. Blood red were his spurs in the golden noon. Wine red was his velvet coat. When they shot him down on the highway, down like a dog on the highway, and he lay in his blood on the highway, the bunch of lace at his throat. Seamus wipes his sleeve across his face and sniffles. He says, there was no call at all to shift you up here away from Patricia, when you didn't even know what happened to the highwayman and Bess. It is a very sad story, and when I said it to my wife, she wouldn't stop crying the whole night till we went to bed. She said there was no call for them redcoats to shoot that highwayman. They are responsible for half the troubles of the world, and they never had any pity on the Irish either. Now, if you want to know any more poems, Frankie, tell me, and I'll get them from the pub and bring them back in my head.